Alright, time for homework 28 for the honors classes. We're dealing with matrices, and specifically matrix multiplication, which is in itself a really complicated process, but we'll try and keep it as clear and simple as we can here. So first we're trying to get A, B. So you gotta take matrix A, which is 2, -1, -6, 1. And you're timesing it by B. That's 4, 4, -3, -5. Okay? So we gotta multiply this again. Remember, matrix multiplication is weird. You gotta do each row times each column. So let's take that first row there. Here, I'll make this a little bit bigger. So you gotta do the first entry times the first entry, second one times the second one. So 2 times 4. 2 times 4. And then you add the next two things being multiplied together. Okay, that's your first entry. Then you gotta do your your first row times your second column, and you're gonna put it over in this region. And you gotta do 2 times 4 again, and then you add -1 times -5. Okay, and we got our first row done. Our second row needs to now be multiplied by the first column. You gotta do -6 times 4, and then you add 1 times -3. And then you got to get your last entry, you gotta do -6 times 1, and then you gotta times it by that second column, which is 4, -5. So -6 times 4 plus 1 times -5. Okay, so there's all our entries that we had to calculate. They're going to give us some numbers, and we'll finally put it in our little matrix here. So first bit of multiplying, adding stuff. 2 times 4 is 8. -1 times -3 is 3. So you got 8 plus 3, which is 11. Next one, we'll do 2 times 4, which is 8. -1 times 5 is -5. 8 plus -5 is 3. Moving on to the next row. -6 times 4 is -24. 1 times -3 is -3. So -24 plus -3 gives you -27. And then we got -6 times 4 is -24. And 1 times -5 is -5. -24 plus -5 is -29. And we got our answer. Is this matrix here, 11, 3, -27, -29. And we'll move on to AC. We're following like the same exact steps. You got A, which is 2, -1, -6, 1. And you have to times it by C, which is 5, -6, 3, 2. Remember, your rows get multiplied by the columns. So row, column is going to be our first entry there. 2 times 5 times 5. And then -1 times -6, -1 times -6. There's our first entry. Multiply that by that second column now to get 2 times 3 plus -1 times 2. Okay, remember, first number with the first number, second number with the second one. Now we need to get our second row there. You got -6. Here, let's put that up more. I don't want to take up all the space. You got -6 times 5. You have to add 1 times -6 because we multiply by that first column there. Time to multiply by the second column. You have to take -6 times by 3, and you add 1 times 2. Alright, so now we know what all the calculation parts are. It's time to do the multiplication and the adding. First item, you got 2 times 5, which is 10, and you add negative 1 times negative 6, which is positive 6. So 10 plus 6 gives you 16. And my 6 is hideous. Moving on to the next part, 2 times 3 is 6. Negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. 6 plus negative 2 is 4. Let's move on to the second row. Negative 6 times 5 is negative 30. 1 times negative 6 is negative 6. Negative 30 plus negative 6 is negative 36. And on to our last one. Negative 6 times 3 is negative 18. 1 times 2 is 2. Negative 18 plus 2 is negative 16. And ta-da, we got AC.